Hi everybody, I want to welcome you to Logic. You're taking Logic online, and that can be a little more difficult if you're just studying from a book, but if you're watching me right now, you're actually watching the first of many videos that I've done for the course where you're going to get the same exact lecture that I give my students who take Logic face-to-face in the classroom, and you're going to be able to see on the screen the same kind of handout. So hopefully these videos will help, and the content I cover in the handouts and what I talk about in the videos, this is actually a good template for you for what to focus on in the book. The book can have a little bit more detail sometimes than I wish to cover, so if I don't really focus on it too much, if I don't focus on it in the video here, and it seems like I skip an area, then that's a good indication that you don't have to focus on that as much when you're doing the reading, so it can give you your bearings a little bit when you are doing the reading. And my recommendation of how to maybe approach this class, some of you, if you really just like using the book and that really works for you, and you know videos won't work as well, you want to primarily start with the book and use the videos here and there when you need to look at one if there's an area in the book you don't understand. There'll be many of you. What will work for you is watch the videos first as we go along, then go back and go through the book. So whatever combination, how you want to approach this class, I want you to see the book and the videos has curricular resources. Okay, one is all in print, your traditional way of getting the lecture content, and the other one is obviously more electronic and digital with the videos. Both will give you the content that you need for the course. Okay, so this is the first video, and we're going to just jump right in to Chapter 1, Section 1.1, and we're going to go over basic concepts. Okay, basically, what is an argument in philosophy? It's far different than just getting in an argument with someone where there's emotion and you're talking back and forth, you're interrupting or even yelling at each other. That's not what is meant by a philosophy argument. You'll learn that as we go through this first video here. And arguments are made out of premises and a conclusion. So we're going to go over basic concepts, and let's just jump right in. And as you know, if you've gone through the website and read how the class works, every video that I do for you will have the handout that I pass out in a face-to-face class. You have access to it, which you'll see in the video, but you also can print it out or boot it up from the link on the website. So if you go to the Content tab for this course and go down to the appropriate section that we happen to be in, you will see some links there where you can print out the handout to save yourself writing all that down. So the best way is have a handout in front of you, watch the video, and hopefully that'll facilitate things. Okay, so the point is there's always the ability to print out the handout that you see in the video. You can have it in front of you to save a bunch of writing. Okay, so Section 1.1, basic concepts, arguments, and arguments are made out of premises and a conclusion. Okay, so let me give you a definition of an argument here. It's a group of statements, okay, one or more of which are claimed to provide support for or reasons to believe one of the others. Basically, a group of statements that purports to prove something or imply something. So in philosophy, if we jump down here, we'll come back down here again. An argument in philosophy is when you're given a statement that is a reason or it's explaining a fact, and you're saying, because of this statement, this reason, this evidence that I've articulated, we are implying, or it implies, another statement. And so the statements that give you reasons or evidence or facts, and these are called premises, and we'll come back to this. You have an argument when you have some premises, some claimed evidence, some things we know, knowledge possessed, and we're saying this implies another statement. and that statement that we say it implies, or we can add, it's called the conclusion. And the conclusion is what is claimed to follow from the evidence. It's knowledge gained. So from evidence, and if it's evidence to us, it's knowledge we possess. An argument is what we possess implies something else we can add to our knowledge. We can gain knowledge. It implies another statement. So we have a group of statements that is the claimed evidence, articulates it, and we're saying this claimed evidence implies another statement, knowledge gained, then you have an argument, okay? Now I've been using the word statements a lot. So an argument is a group of statements, and you know initially here we can group those statements into premises. You can have one premise or more than one premise. And these statements that are the premise, you have an argument when they actually imply another statement, and that'll be one statement, the conclusion. But the conclusion is a statement, and premises are statements. So we need to just make sure what we mean by a statement. And in the book is going to interchange. They're going to call a statement or a proposition. They'll be interchanged. So if I say a proposition, that's synonymous with a statement. If I say a statement, that's synonymous with a proposition. That's how the book is going to treat that, okay? So if I go back and forth on those, don't, just realize I'm using them as synonyms, okay? And in an argument, which is a group of statements, what's a definition of a statement? It's basically something that you could read it and say, is that true or is that false, okay? So here's some examples of statements. The door is closed. Well, that's either true or false. And in my office right now, the door is closed is true, because my door is closed. Chocolate truffles are loaded with calories. True or false? No wives ever cheat on their husbands. That'll be a statement that's either true or false. Here's some examples of sentences, things humans utter that are not statements, because for arguments in logic, philosophical, logical arguments, they only deal with sentences that we call statements. Statements that are true or false. If you have other kinds of sentences, they're not considered propositions or statements. They're not going to comprise logical arguments, okay? Logical arguments are only a group of statements, okay? So here you would never find these kinds of sentences, utterances, in a logical argument. Let's go to the movie tonight. Okay, you're just suggesting an idea. Fantastic. That's not a statement. You're expressing how you feel about something. Turn off the TV right now. That's a command, okay? So these kinds of sentences, they will not comprise logical arguments, because in the book, those are not statements. It's going to be sentences like this, and you'll see this as we bring up arguments. You're going to see they're always full of statements, and they're not full of emotive expressions or commands, stuff like that. Okay? So an argument is a group of statements, one or more of which are claimed to provide support for or reasons to believe one of the others. And basically, it's a group of statements that purport to prove something or imply something. Okay? And so you have these group of statements, and they're divided. Premises and a conclusion. Now this is important. In every argument, you can have one premise that will imply another statement, which is the conclusion. For example, you could say, every single part of this chair is white. Therefore, the chair is not blue. Well, that's just one premise, okay? So you can have an argument with one premise, and it's an argument because that one premise, which is a statement, implies something else. You can gain knowledge, right? Then you have an argument. If it's just one premise and it's enough to imply a conclusion, that's called an immediate inference, because it's got one premise and you can immediately make an inference about something else. But there are a lot of arguments that will have more than one premise. So when I say premise or premises, just realize an argument can just have one premise that implies another statement, which would be the conclusion, or it can have many premises which imply that conclusion. And an argument, if it's got one premise or more than one, it always, though, is trying to argue for just one conclusion. You don't have multiple conclusions. A good, tight, logical argument, they focus on premises implying just one conclusion, okay? So you can have one premise or many premises, but they're always used to argue for just one conclusion, okay? And an argument, like I said, a group of statements, and they're divided into two groups. Premises, the claimed evidence, statements that set forth the reasons, the support, and the other group, the conclusion. What is claimed to follow from the evidence? The statement that the evidence is claimed to support or imply, okay? So, to have an argument, you've got to have two things. You've got to have evidence presented, articulated in a statement or many statements. And these statements imply something else. And when they imply something else, I'll draw an arrow, then you have an argument. Okay, implied. We'll put that right there. Okay? Claimed evidence implies another statement. So you have to have both groups, and there has to be an inference made, then you have an argument. If you just had a bunch of premises or facts mentioned, and nobody is using them to say they imply another statement, not an argument. It's just a group of statements. So thank you for listing a bunch of evidence or facts. But if you're not saying they mean something else, it's not an argument. Or let's say you have one statement. You don't really know if it's the premise or the conclusion. It's very isolated, okay? If you just have a statement and you say, I'm concluding this, but you don't mention what was used to conclude that, that's not an argument either. So an argument is a group of statements in the premises and in that conclusion, but you're saying these premise or premises imply this other statement. Together you have an argument. Okay? All right, good arguments are where the premises support, entail, or imply the conclusion, and bad arguments are where the premises do not. Now, many people can say I'm putting forth an argument. They can give you some facts or evidence and actually say it implies another statement, the conclusion. But you can agree with them, I see you are putting forth an argument, but that doesn't automatically mean it's a good argument. It could be a bad argument, though you could concede, I see that you were trying to give me an argument, but just because you gave me an argument, I do see your premises, I do see that conclusion, I do see you're saying the premises imply that conclusion, but it's still not a good argument because those facts that you presented in no way imply with strong force that conclusion. Okay? So what you want to ask to decide if it's a good argument is, this is good to ask, is the relationship between the premises and conclusion such that the conclusion is true if the premises are true? Okay? And here's an important task in analyzing arguments, okay? Before you can decide if it's a good argument, you've got to know what the argument is. You've got to even decide if you have an argument. Sometimes you can have a lot of words, a person saying a lot of things, but they're not really putting forth an argument. So you first have to decide if there is an argument, and then if it's a good one. And the only way for you to decide if there's an argument, or what will help you, or finding out what their argument is, you have to know what their premises are and what the conclusion is. So you have to identify that. So the important task in analyzing arguments, you need to distinguish the premises from the conclusion. And let's not have a plural there. For convention purposes, we always list out the premises first, then the conclusion. Your book will talk about that. So let's say you have a bunch of statements, and you look and you go, okay, I think this person has put forth an argument. The first thing you've got to do is, what are the premises, and list them, and then what is that conclusion that they're saying those premises imply? Okay? So, to distinguish this, you do have some help. you know, not all arguments will give you these nice helps, but many will. In your book in Chapter 1, and in Chapter 1 it's going to be on page 2 or 3, it could be on 4 depending on your edition, you will have certain indicator words that are called conclusion indicator words, okay? And you will have premise indicator words. So remember, if you want to see if there's a good argument, you first got to decide if there's an argument, and if you can see premises and a conclusion, well, that can help you see what their argument is. And there are indicator words. Often a conclusion will follow certain words that are used, and often premises follow certain words. So if you go to your book, and in the current edition here, section 3, I mean page 3, not section 3, if you go to page 3 at the top in the 11th edition of the this textbook, you have conclusion indicator words. So if you see therefore, wherefore, thus, consequently, we may infer, etc., etc., I'll have you read all those, then often the conclusion can follow. And you're already familiar with one of them. When someone says therefore and then they have a statement, often what follows therefore is a conclusion. Consequently, often what follows consequently is the conclusion. As a result, we may infer, so, okay? And then for premise indicator words, in your text, if you see the word since, because, for, etc., often premises will follow those words. Okay, so that's kind of nice. When you have indicator words, it can show you, it could show you, help you identify what the premises are and what that conclusion is. Okay, I'll tell you what, we'll stop here, and in the next video on section 1.1 we'll go a little deeper in this, and then we'll get some practice on seeing an argument and how we can use indicator words to help us find out what the conclusion is and what the premises are. But for right now, you know what an argument is. It's a group of statements, you know what statements are, divided into two parts. Statements that serve as the premises and a one statement that is the conclusion. And if those premises, the evidence, the facts that are presented, and then the person says these facts, evidence, support or imply this other statement from knowledge we already possess, it implies another statement we can add. If we added, it's knowledge gained, then you have an argument. So if you think there's an argument there, you want to find the premises, you want to find that conclusion, because like I said, sometimes you could have a group of statements together and there's no argument whatsoever. You've got to see the premises, you've got to see that conclusion, and you've got to see that person tying them together. These premises, this evidence, these facts imply this other statement, then you got an argument. Okay, so we'll go to the second video for section 1.1, and I'll give you some examples to show you how you can identify premises and a conclusion in an argument.